Hello out there in Internet Radio Land. This is the Midnight Rider podcast, and you are listening to ES Win, the Midnight Rider. That song was Ghost Town by my stepbrother, actually, Kevin Winnick. You can find him over at soundcloud.com/Kevin Winnick. That's two N's. I'll put it in the comments section of the podcast as well, so you can check out some more of his work if you want. I've worked with Kevin Winnick on a number of projects before. His song Resurrection is actually the song that was used in the trailer for Letters from a Dead Earth. So I like working with him. He's also apparently got in the works a theme song for my most popular book, the series that goes with it, which is The Cygnus War. And so I'm looking forward to that, and you'll definitely be one of the first, well, listeners of this podcast will be some of the first to hear it when it comes out. I'll definitely be putting it up and bragging about it once it comes out. So I'm changing a few things in regards to how the podcast is. First of all, you may notice that it's no longer a comedy podcast. It's just the Midnight Rider podcast. Kind of free things up a little bit there. Still unscripted. Still totally spoken word, well, with the exception of the music in the intro. And still, trying to be a little funny, I suppose. But other than that, just kind of progressing through more specific issues, I suppose, and just kind of keeping on with what I started here. I guess it was just only about 2 weeks ago, huh? It seems like forever. So let's start with what's new with Thunderoon Publishing. My publishing house is getting ready to release the breakout novel by first-time author John Ogden. That'll be coming out here at the end of the week on the 12th. I'm planning on making that available and doing the official launch. The book is called Old Motorcycles, and it's a collection of poetry and some short fiction, and really interesting, kind of sad and kind of I would say deeply touching, something you really feel when you read it. Very well done. The poetry and prose is very elegant, very well worded. I enjoyed reading it, and I have to say I turned down quite a few pieces that come through the doors of my publishing company because I want only the best stuff that's up there, and this was really good in my opinion. He's just about as good, if not as good, if on par with, definitely, the author that I published earlier this year, Christopher Hinkle Sr., who did the book Parade Rest, which is also a great poetry collection offered through Thunder in Publishing. So anyway, looking forward to launching John Ogden. In terms of my current projects, I'm currently working on another installment for the Cygnus War universe, so that'll be fun. I'm not going to release too much because I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I am working on a new thing set in the Cygnus War universe. I'll be telling you about that here within the next few weeks. In terms of the magazines I run, the last of the magazines that I put on temporary hiatus has currently gone on hiatus just here at the beginning of this midway through last week. Smashed Cat magazine, that was the last one of the 4 that I put on temporary hiatus because the workload was just it was a bit too much, but I might get back to them here at some point. Kind of taking a break, getting away from it so that I don't burn out on everything that's going on, getting caught up on some of the other projects and feedback and whatnot, and sort of trying to find ways to bring more viewership and attention to the publishing company so that the different writers that I represent, and of course myself, can all get a little bit more viewership and exposure, because it seems to be it's not enough, and I'll talk about that some more later, but it's not enough, and I want to find a way to bring more in, get more exposure for the people who I've already published and the people that I'll be publishing in the future. So other than that, magazines that are not on hiatus, Linguistic Erosion's got schedule pretty well packed here for the next, just about the next month, half a month, something like that. Daily Love looking good into the end of this month, but it's gonna need some more. It's gonna need some more love poetry and stuff like that. Some good stuff coming in soon. So if you write love poetry or romance flash fiction, consider stopping on by and sending something in, and we'll see if it's good enough to go up on the front page there. The website address for Daily Love is www.dailylove.net if you're interested. We like working with young writers and established writers, but always trying to get new voices out there. So if you've never tried your hand at love poetry, or you're looking to get published for the first time, think about sending something over to Daily Love. Also, if you're into poetry in general, it doesn't have to be love poetry, but any genre of poetry. Another magazine that I run, which has some room if you've got some good stuff to send in and is open to new writers, is my website Leaves of Ink, and that web address is leaves-of-ink.com. So check that out and send in some poetry that I can look at, and if it's good, we'll put it up I will put it up on the front page, and So anyway, that's the state of the publishing company. I've also been getting back into doing a little bit of stock photography with the new time that I've had. I just did another photo shoot here. Oh man, it was Friday. Friday I did a new photo shoot with some gear and got a haircut and different look, and thought, hey, take advantage of this. And so I ran, I think about probably 11 different sets out of the photo shoot, and I'll be uploading those over the course of the next few weeks to my DeviantArt account, which is where I keep all my stock. I also keep stock on stock photography on my Von Singer's Ether and Steamworks, which was originally a steampunk photography project. Also home to the currently in the works Von Singer card-based RPG, so that'll be fun once that comes out. I'm planning on seeing if I can finish that up this year, especially if there's interest. That'll get me moving. But anyway, if you're into stock photography, you're looking for references or material to use for your photoshops and whatnot, I have stock photography on my DeviantArt page, which is Durkee, DURKEE 341 at DeviantArt, or was it .deviantart.com, and also you can find it at www.vonsinger.com, and that has links to my DeviantArt page as well. So that's a free resource I put out there for people to use, because I know how valuable it is to have sketching references when you're first starting out and learn how to draw, getting practicing and refining your technique, and also heck, I like having lots of photos around, not just of myself, but of a number of, or like pretty much I bring a camera with me pretty much everywhere and get strange textures and stuff like that, and different things that I can morph and recolor and use for book covers and for project imagery and whatnot. So I have a pretty serious folder of stock photography I've taken just for Thunderoon Publishing, several thousand photos of different textures and whatnot that I have, and I release probably about 50% of those out into the world for people to use for their own projects. So that resource, that's another thing I've been working on lately with the extra time I've had, and actually just got back from vacation. So that was why, if you had caught the last podcast, that was why I was silent last week. One of the nice things about having one person in a relationship who works from home, and that would be me as the writer, is that it's a lot easier to schedule long vacations. And I tell you what, we were due for one. I think the last real serious vacation my wife and I took was back in, oh goodness, it would have been about the end of May. Yeah, our honeymoon, the end of May. We took, I think we took 5 days, and that was it. And that was fun. That was a lot of fun. We had saved up quite a bit of money so we could hit bed and breakfasts. We had 3 different bed and breakfasts in the California, in the 2 of them up in the area where I grew up, which is up there in Sonora, Tuolumne County area, and one which is one of our favorites out there by Fort Bragg. It's called Howard Creek. If you're looking for a really great and really inexpensive, just awesome, absolutely awesome bed and breakfast to stay at, check out Howard Creek out there by Fort Bragg. They are awesome. Rustic. They took an old barn, and the guy cut down redwood trees and stuff like that in the yard, and milled the wood himself and did stained glass work and turned an old barn into a rustic palace. I mean, it's like living in a treehouse when you're there, and it's only a little over $100 a night, which is about the same rate you'd pay for a normal hotel out there. And then you get breakfast in the morning, and you get to wander around. They're right on the beach, so you get to wander out to this private beach. It's just full of sea glass when the tide comes in. Oh, it's absolutely beautiful out there. They even have a trail that wanders up into the trees, and during the late summer there's more blackberries there than you could eat in the entire time you stay there, if you stay more than one day. So that place is absolutely awesome. Definitely, if you're in the area, the Fort Bragg area, that's definitely a place to check out. The 2 that we stayed at in Sonora or the Sonora area was Beretta Gardens in Sonora, which always has sort of a soft spot in my heart for Beretta Gardens, because it was right down at the bottom of the hill I grew up on. So the view from there is very similar to the view from the house that I grew up in, and so kind of a soft spot there. And the other one was McCaffrey House up in Twainhart, and we stayed one night at McCaffrey House, one night at Beretta, and 2 nights at Howard Creek for our honeymoon. That was a lot of fun. McCaffrey House up in Twainhart is great too. They've got the sweetest dog in the world there. very clean, very nice little Victorian house up there above the snow line. So that was a lot of fun too. But this vacation that we took here just last week, oh man, I feel so much better. Like I said, it's been a good year, and we didn't really get out too much. We had 9 days, if you include the weekends, that we took off, and that 9 days we spent 7 of it at home. But it was nice because it was just me and the missus 24/7. And for some guys, I think, I'm sure that sounds like a nightmare, but one of the things I want to talk about tonight too is just how interesting it is that, well, I won't get into it too much, but just sort of how interesting it is that we do the different things that we do, and the way that we relate to one another, not just my wife and myself, but humans in general. That's one of the things I want to talk about a little bit tonight later. But we spent two days at a place we'd never been at before, called Eden Vale Inn. And that's up there in Placerville, which is also here in California. It's about probably an hour drive up from Sacramento, here where I'm at. And that place was amazing. That was amazing. I'm a huge fan of fruit, and I've got a container garden actually I'm developing right now in the side yard where I'm at, and lots of 5-gallon buckets full of trees and fruit trees and stuff like that. And they had fresh fruit for breakfast. Like sort of just like, hey, have a fruit, and then I'll bring you breakfast. In addition to that, and man, that always impresses me. Fresh, ripe fruit. I mean, like ripe. I mean, like everything that was in that fruit bowl was sweet, and we're talking a mixture of things that come together at different seasons. So blackberries, strawberries, melons. I mean, it was just, it was delicious. No bananas too. Oh, thank goodness. I'm one of those weirdos who doesn't like bananas most of the time, so it was nice. And pineapple too was in it, but. Anyway, great breakfast, beautiful area. Definitely a soft spot in my heart for that place because they have a ton of fruiting trees, just sort of like in their garden. Hey, go outside and check out the trees. They even had a loquat. That was cool. Loquat trees, I didn't think would be very successful as high up as Placerville. But they have a loquat tree there. It doesn't fruit much because the frost kills almost all the fruit, which makes it just kind of into sort of a raggedy tropical decorative, and that's about it. But it was still cool to see a loquat up there, and I was able to brag to some of my friends who have been sort of hemming and hawing about whether or not they want to get a loquat tree, because I've got a ton of them, and I'm trying to give them away because they're just incredibly. I couldn't believe it. How many of them popped up from the seeds I put in the ground and in little planter pots last year. But it seems like every single seed that I put in the ground last year came up with a tree, and so we've got a good 50 or 60 loquat trees that are all about 8 inches high out in my garden right now. I'm like, hey, you want a fruiting tree? It'll start fruiting in 4 years and double its yield every year. And people are like, well, I don't know, I don't know. Okay, come on, let's get into some foodscaping, come on. So that's one of my little hobbies. But anyway, wonderful place, Edenvale, definitely worth checking out if you're in the Placerville area. Pretty neat area up there. Placerville reminds me a little bit of home, sort of a main street that goes through a bunch of historic buildings. The kind that are all brick and cement and stone with the big metal doors so they could survive the California fires way back when. Those sort of gold rush towns that still have a population. Those are always fun. But so anyway, 9 days with the missus, and we did a lot of stuff. We spent, I think we were only apart for about 3 hours during the whole time. The whole rest of the time for 9 days we were together. And that 3 hours that I went elsewhere, I went over to a friend's house, and he was doing a game day, and she's not really so much into games as I am, and I'm not talking. I mean, like, I do everything. I do video games, board games. This was a board game day, and she's not so much into games as I am. Something her and I are spending some time working with. Sort of like she just hasn't been exposed to good ones yet. She's been exposed to Monopoly, and that's about it. And so I went over there to go hang out and ended up getting there a little early and ended up playing Lost Cities, which is a fun little card game. I ended up playing that with the daughter of my friend that owned the house where I was at, and sort of wandering around talking about fruit trees with his girlfriend. And but later on, her and I went back. I convinced her to go back, and we played Cards Against Humanity, which is an absolutely killer card game. I highly recommend that. That is a fun one, and she loved it. It was great because it was sort of, she was kind of on the fence about games, and then we played Cards Against Humanity, and it really opened her up and to that whole world of sort of newer card games and board games and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. Cards Against Humanity, absolutely hilarious. We played 11-person game that night of Cards Against Humanity, and there were some great responses. I hear it, if you've never heard of it, I hear it's very similar. It's like an adult version of a game that's called Apples to Apples. I haven't played Apples to Apples, so I can't really tell you what the comparison is. But the basic idea behind Cards Against Humanity is that you have two different kinds of cards. You have white cards and you have black cards. And the black cards have sort of like a Mad Lib on them. They have some sort of a sentence with blanks in it. And the white cards have words and phrases on them. And these words and phrases range from the relatively tame, like celebrity names like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Nicolas Cage, and stuff like that, to some really out there stuff. Including, and like I said, when I say adult card game, I mean there's definitely some mature language that's used on those cards, which makes it that much more fun, in my opinion. But so anyways, you have the person who's the card czar, I think is the term that they use, and that rotates each turn to the person on the left. And the person who's the card czar for that term draws a black card and reads the little Mad Lib on the back side with the blanks, and the people around the table all have white cards, and the white cards all have, like I said, these phrases and words on them, and whatever the sentence on the black card is, you try to fill in the blanks, and the best answer, according to the card czar, is the one that gets the point, and you play to a point, like when or a point number, like when we played here this Saturday. We played to 5 points, which took probably 3 hours to play to 5 points with 11 people. Mostly because by the time we were done, pretty much everybody had at least 1 or 2 points. So, and one of the things that makes it especially fun is that you hand in your cards, and the best answer is chosen, but it's sort of, they're handed in anonymously, so you're like, that was my answer, okay, here's your point. And that was one of the reasons why just about everybody had 1 point or 2 points. But a lot of fun, and so that's definitely Cards Against Humanity. Check it out online, definitely highly recommended. They even have a free print and play version on their website. I was so stoked to find that today when I looked them up again online, because I knew that there were some fan-made expansions out there, and I wanted to look into those a little bit. But so that's fun. And back to my point: 9 days, 9-day vacation. Definitely something I needed. I feel human again in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. But it also made me think. We spent a fair amount of time watching movies and taking care of different things that need to be taken care of, around the house and outside the house, and errands and various things like that. And my wife is currently in college as well. She's also educating herself, and she's working on a math class. And I used to work as a math tutor. It was probably about 3 years ago. I was working as a math tutor, so I'm sort of her live-in math tutor now, and I like it. I like being her math tutor. But we've been so busy the last few months, it seems like, with everything that's happened. And there has been a lot of stuff that's happened in the last few months. It has been a whirlwind roller coaster ride. But because of that, she hadn't really had a chance to do much studying, and she had an exam just this last Thursday, and so I was tutoring her, sort of doing an intensive tutoring, and I tutored her for 6 or 8 hours straight one day early in our vacation. And so we did all kinds of stuff, from stuff that just made me want to tear my hair out, like working on math for 8 hours. I mean, even doing math tutoring, math is not my passion, and when you're both tired, you and the student, as it were, tempers flare. It wasn't all sweetness and light. We'll just say that, and you're dealing with errands with each other. You're trying to. We were switching back to days during the week. Here we are most of the time. We wake up 8 in the evening, 8 p.m. Go to bed at like noon. I mean, just asleep during the main part of the day. And here we are transitioning to days as quickly as possible during that weekend. During the first weekend, because we had 2 weekends with a week in between, which is how we ended up with 9 days. But transitioning 2 days that first weekend, so that when we went out to Edenvale for Monday and Tuesday, we could be awake all day, so that we could explore Placerville and enjoy the sunlight and stuff like that, and not just end up spending both days that we had at that bed and breakfast sort of awake from 8 to noon when no one else is, just sitting there watching movies like we would be doing at home. So, and then afterwards, sort of making our way back, to night shift. So some grumpiness, of course, but the thing that I find interesting, and this is sort of what I've been leading to with this whole description, is I find it interesting that people tell me things like they used to tell me. I've been with my wife for 3 years now. May 21st is the anniversary, third anniversary of our first date. So we've been together for 3 years now. We've been married almost 1 full year, but we've been living together since August of 2010. So we've been in close contact for almost 3 years now, and that's not, I'm not saying that's an eternity. I'm not saying that all of our struggles as a couple are past. Heck, we worked out some long-standing misunderstandings and miscommunications here just this last week when we had these 9 days together. I'm not saying that we're like some sort of epitome of perfection as far as couples go, or that we have no work at all in our relationship ahead of us, but I found it to be kind of interesting, and something I was dealing with, that I love this woman so much. She's literally my best friend, and 9 days together, not really hanging out with anyone else, with the exception of that Saturday and the 2 nights at the out of town, 24/7, her and I, no one else. And I think that I've heard that for a lot of people, that's something that just drives them nuts. The idea of being alone with their partner for that long, without anybody else, would just make them go stir crazy. And it kind of made me wonder, well, what's different about me? What's different about us? Is it just that we, connect so well, that we are such good friends that this is possible? I've had people tell me, well, it's because you're newlyweds. Dude, we've been living together for almost 3 years. And they say, well, that's still newlyweds. Well, okay. Who am I to judge? Who knows? Maybe in another, 2 to 5 years, I'll feel the same way. I'll be like, oh God, 9 days with the missus. But there's a part of me that thinks that that's probably not going to happen. I don't think I'm going to get tired of it. I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm going to get tired of it. And it made me think, a lot. It made me think a lot about what I want to do with my life. Because I already know what I want to do with my life, but more like how I want to manage my time. It's funny to me that the only time when my wife and I are really apart, with the exception of when she's in class, is when she's at work. And I'm working too. I'm at home, but I'm working too during that period, and that makes the time go by faster. But I miss her while she's at work. 8 hours. No, 9 hours. 9 hours. If you include driving and lunch, she's out there. And that 9 hours is not easy. If I've got a good project going, it kind of flies. And sometimes when the time gets close to about the time she's going to get in, I might be like, oh crap, I'm trying to finish this project, But I guess it's more the anticipation of it that is difficult. When we start getting down to that last half hour before she has to go to work, I start missing her. Heck, we're transitioning back to evenings here today. We woke up at like 8 a.m. Today, and then took a nap from about 4 until about 7. And the entire time I was taking that nap, I was tossing and turning, and I was thinking how much I already missed her. And how long is she going to be gone? 8 hours. That's it. She's only going to be, 9 hours. She's only going to be gone 9 hours. And already I was laying there tossing and turning thinking, I miss this woman. I just love spending that much. I just love spending all my time with her. And it's not like we spend all our time in bed. I think we're probably as intimate as any other couple. It's just she's a lot of fun to spend time with. She's, like I said before, she's my best friend. We're into about 95% of the same things. Literally, we have the same tastes in music, movies. I'm getting her into gaming a little bit here and there. She's getting me more into getting out more and sort of some of the finer things in life, which is cool. Finer things in life, I mean things like bed and breakfast. I'm one of those kind of guys that wouldn't travel out to another town unless I had a friend that lived there whose couch I could crash on. That's always sort of been my philosophy. Absolute minimal financial impact on my bank account whenever I go anywhere. But she's kind of showing me that it's okay to spend a few bucks here and there if you save up for some of these nicer things that I had never experienced before. So that's cool. Kind of both sort of helping each other grow in various directions. And when I said earlier that it made me think about how I spend my time, it made me think about priorities. I always wanted to. I've always wanted to be a writer. I am a writer. I'm an author. I've always wanted this path. This is a path that I've always embraced. It's always been my path, being the author. The guy who owns the publishing company. Although I would give up the editor thing. I wouldn't say in a heartbeat, but I don't much care for it. If I had $1 million. One of the things I would do would be I would hire someone to take over the editor side. I'd probably watch them for a while to make sure they didn't, just sort of go nuts and, reject everything that comes in, or go nuts and take everything that comes in. But I would definitely hire someone to be the editor, and so I could focus entirely on living my life and on writing. But in regards to how I spend my time, it made me think. Anyway, so this path that I'm on, I never really cared how much money it made, as long as it made enough to take care of the bills. That was all that really mattered. And in the first podcast I talked about my student loan, and you bet your buttons that's one of the first things that I'm going to be working to pay off. That thing is that's the albatross around my neck, and it's my goal to get rid of that ASAP, just because it's I don't make a lot of money doing what I'm doing, and that student loan takes almost all of it. And because of the fact, it takes a bit of it now, but it's going to take almost all of it next year when it triples and the payment triples. And because it's a private loan, issued through a bank instead of through the federal government, there's no way around it. You can't get rid of it because of bankruptcy. You can't get reduced payments. except the reduced payment plan I'm on right now, which expires this time next year. But so there's no way out of it, and they don't care how much money you have left over after your monthly payment. They don't give a rat's ass. You pay it, or they skewer whoever the cosigner is. And as I've mentioned in the first podcast, that cosigner is my stepmother, who my father and her are barely managing to hold on to what they have as it is. The idea of saddling them with an additional huge monthly payment is just totally unconscionable to me, especially since my father is recently recovering from cancer. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that they don't end up having to deal with that at all. Heck, I'd send them money whenever possible, but just so they keep them going. But that would probably be one of the first things I would do too, if I had a significant increase in cash, is I'd start paying off their credit cards and whatever else it is that they have, that the car and whatnot, and helping them out as much as possible. They helped me out a little bit when I was going out to Spartan, and I know that my father definitely, as awesome as he is and as proud as he is, as hard as he works, he's still not as strong as he used to be. Stage 4 cancer with massive amounts of chemotherapy and a feeding tube. I mean, that, everything that he's gone through in the last 2 years, that's brutal, absolutely brutal. And he is doing good considering how much he's been through. But he's nowhere near as strong as he used to be. So I'll do everything I can to protect him. But when I think of my point is that I think about how much money I make as an author. I think, well, as long as the bills are paid, that's enough. But I was thinking about more this week, and I was thinking I really, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who has thought this, but and it may be a bit cliche, but I really want to be a millionaire. And the reason why is pretty simple. It's not, there are things that I want to buy, of course, but that's not really why I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire because I could live comfortably off of 40 or 50 grand a year, and just put the whole rest of it into the stock market or into a savings account, and take a permanent vacation. My wife and I can comfortably live on 40 to 50 grand a year, and if we could just go on a permanent vacation, spend 24/7 with each other for the rest of our lives, or at least while we're young, that's sort of my goal. That would be really cool. So I was thinking about, I have a sort of a bucket list, in a sense, of things that I'm gonna do when I make my first couple million, and I am planning on it. I believe in sort of that positive attitude, sort of attraction, like attracts like. Yes, I'm gonna make my millions, and I'm gonna do it off of my book sales. It's gonna be easy money. It's gonna be stuff that I've already put in the effort for, and it's coming. And what am I gonna do? Well, first thing I'm gonna do is pay off that student loan. Kick its ass, finish it, get that one-time quote, full repayment thing plan with it, just bam, done, move on. I'm gonna take care of my credit card debt, just bam, like that. I'm gonna take care of the car. We recently had to buy a new car, and when I say had to, I mean we had to. The car that we had was going to require about $10,000 worth of work over the course of the next 6 months. So we decided that instead of putting $10,000 into a car that was already 13 years old, better to just turn around and pick up monthly payments on a brand new car that's only $16,000 instead of $10,000, but brand new car, and we've got 12,000 miles on it now, which is nice. But that would be another thing I would just bam, pay off. There's a comic book and game shop down here near where we're at, just a handful of blocks away, that sort of a mom and pop joint, independently owned. Love it. Been around forever, and absolutely love the woman who runs it. And I've been going to this particular place since I was probably 10 years old, and they haven't changed much, and they're always just kind of, I don't know how successful they are, but there's always sort of this air or this vibe that indicates that they have loyal customers that sort of keep them afloat. And I think one of the things that I would do is I would get $10,000 in cash. I would get a handful of my friends together, Spencer, Kevin, Dan Chartrand, and my buddy Randy, and my wife, and just sort of come in like in a line. Just have this whole fantasy. We show up at the comic book store, and my wife is leading the group, and then I got my buddies in between and me at the end, and we file into this little comic book store. And as I come in, I grab the door, close the door, flip the sign from open to closed, and then show off these 2 stacks of $100 bills. And then just tell my friends, let's find $10,000 worth of stuff. We're going to make her day. And just, do I have room for all that stuff? No, not yet. But, that's not the point. The point is that I love this place, and the lady that's there is awesome, and I would love to be able to just go in with $10,000 one day and just drop it. Here you go. I want to make your day. I want to make you as happy today as you have made me in the past. So that's one of the things on my list too. Oh man, other than that, I'd like to be able to put money towards my little sister's education. My little sister is currently 13 years old, so she won't be going to college for at least another 3 years. And yes, I do mean 16, because I was in college at 16, and I don't know if she's going to follow the same course as me or not, but I'd like to be prepared by the time she's 16 to be able to pay for her to go to school and study what she wants. Because otherwise she's going to have to be figuring out financial aid like I did, when I was going for my English degree, and seeing what she can get by with, and maybe writing for scholarships and whatnot. And I'd love to be able to take care of her education, so that's another thing. And be able to put more money, make my wife's educational progress easier. Right now, we don't have to apply for any student loans for her, so that's not really so much that aspect of it, but more making it where we can afford for her to be a full-time student. And I've offered that to her before. I said, hey, I love you so much that if you wanted to go to school full-time so that you could get a job that you really genuinely love, and she likes her job well enough, but like one that she really genuinely loves, I said, I'll give up my career and I'll find a job. I got a bachelor's degree in English. I'm sure that I can find a job working for an insurance company or something, doing data entry work or whatever, and make 40 grand a year or whatever, and you could go to school full time. I told her that. I offered that to her, but she likes the fact that I'm working as an author. I'm working from home, and I'm always here and keep the house clean and cook the meals and wash the dishes, and she likes the arrangement that we have, and I would like to be able to. That's another reason why I want to make my millions, as it were, is so that she doesn't really have an excuse not to pursue her education full time. But I like the idea of the permanent vacation. I feel like I don't necessarily feel like I'm entitled to it or I've earned it, but I do feel like it seems right. It seems genuinely right, the idea of the permanent vacation, for me and for her. It seems like such a shame that we spend so much of our lives working at jobs we hate, or dislike, or away from the ones we love even. A lot of my family spread all over hell and half of Jericho, but it didn't used to be that way. My family, every member of my family, all used to live up in Tuolumne County, up there where I grew up. Every member of my family. But times change. Times change, and now every member of my family, it seems like, is in a different area of California, and some of them aren't even in California anymore, and I'm still coming to terms with that, I'd say for the first 15 or 16 years of my life it was that everybody lived in the same town. My mom was the only one who lived outside of Tuolumne County, and she only lived a couple hours away. Now my grandparents live down in San Diego, and on my father's side, and I don't see them anymore. I see them about once a year. How much longer are they going to be around? My grandpa's 87 this year. My grandpa Duke, he's 87 this year. How much longer is he going to be around? I don't know. His mom only lived to be 99. We'll see. Another relative that my wife and I are going to be going and spending some time seeing this year is my grandmother on my mom's side, my grandma Net. She's in her 70s. She recently had some major heart surgery. And really woke me up to the fact that she's not going to be around forever either. She's only a couple of years away from where where her mother was when that was my great grandmother when my great grandmother died. My great grandmother on my mom's side was 79 years old when she died, and kind of makes you think, And so the idea of being chained to one place just seems like such a waste. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we work these jobs? Why do we allow ourselves to be sort of indentured? Yeah, we have to eat. Yeah, we have to pay for shelter. But, with all the technology that's available and with all the money that's out there in the world, is it really right for us to become these sorts of indentured servants? I've read an article here the other day that was talking about neo-feudalism. They were calling the capitalist system we have in America. They were calling it neo-feudalism, as in the new version of peasants working the fields below the castle that's owned by the king. And I definitely see the corollaries. It's frustrating. How do you shake loose of that? Do you unplug from the system entirely? Can you? Is it possible to say fuck this and pull up your roots and find a commune somewhere to become a part of? Is it worth it? I do almost everything that I do for money online. If I go and move into a hippie commune, am I going to be able to do that anymore? I only know of one hippie commune in the I personally only know of one, and they don't have internet. I don't know how many of them are like that, but they don't even have dial-up. So what would I do? Would I be happy? I don't know. I know my wife wouldn't be. She wouldn't. She's not the kind of person who would give up the life that we have so that we could go freeze our ass off during the winter in the woods and worry about mountain lions and milk goats and tend fruit orchards that don't produce because we forgot to cover them when it frosted. This kind of stuff, and I don't blame her. I ask myself, is this something that I want? But what do I want? Well, what I want is what a lot of people want, I suppose. Time, more time. Isn't that sort of the human conundrum? More time. We all want more time. Well, maybe we don't all want more time, but I want more time. I want more time to do things. I want more time to spend with my wife. I want more time to, work on projects and stuff. And maybe this is just me approaching 30, I'm gonna be 29 this year, and I'm sure some people listening to this are like, oh, hoo, big deal, But decade milestones in terms of age have always been a big deal for me. I didn't much give a damn when I turned 21, but turning 20, that was a big thing for me. Now I'm getting ready to turn 30, and it's just a little. My wife, is my wife thinks it's silly. She's a little bit older than me, just a little bit. So she's already gone through this, but not me. And I know that I'll probably look back on it and say, yeah, well, it's only 30, big deal, whatever. And that's, it's just hard to think that way right now, I suppose. The closest I've come to being able to think that way now is to say, well, 30, in another 10 years from then, I'll be 40. And so, where was I 10 years ago? Where was I at age 20? Well, heck, I'll tell you. At age 20, that would have been 2004. I was living at home. I was, oh man. Well, that right there, I think that the struggling to remember is a clear indication of just how much stuff has gone on since then. I hadn't written any books. Well, I was working on a few shorter pieces, and had progressed through Ice Run and part of. I had written High Forge Legacy as well, but hadn't published it, and it was still in. I wasn't doing writing professionally, at that point. I was still convinced I was going to be an English teacher, and this was before Pink Carbide. Pink Carbide was, I think it was 22, and hadn't. God, so as a man, this is a little bit hard to admit, but I was a virgin at that point. Hadn't even, kissed a girl. Yeah, and I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that are going, oh, loser, whatever. But you know what? Fuck it, I don't care. It took me a while to find someone that was worth getting close to on that level, especially with all the crazy diseases and risk of pregnancy out there. That was why I waited. Why I waited until I was 20 was because I wanted to make sure that I I didn't get involved with somebody who was going to go, oh yeah, I'm on the pill, and then, oh, whoops, I've got a baby, and then next thing you know, not only are you saddled with a student loan, but a child support payment as well. Screw that. No, thank you. I have a life to live. I'm not going to be I'm already, subject to the sort of indentured servitude that our society imposes upon us from birth. I'm not going to be indentured to some woman as well who just wanted to pump a kid out, and I'm not going to be indentured to, well, I wish I wasn't indentured to a bank as well, but, that's another reason to make that money, get with what I'm doing. At least if I can be in a cage, it can be a golden cage. It's kind of the way I look at it, and I look at working from home as my golden cage. But anyway, so that was why I waited so long. But oh man, what else was going on back then? This was before Spartan, before I went to Spartan College of Aeronautics and Technology, before I had any kind of college degree. There's been a lot of stuff. I have gone through an incredible amount of stuff in the last 10 years. I've gone through 4 relationships, countless women chased since then. Lived in Tuolumne City, lived in Tulsa, lived in Roseville, lived in Sacramento, Lincoln. Oh man, I've just lived all over the place in the last 10 years. I've been moving around a lot. Gone to 4 different colleges in that 10-year period. Got married. Been in a relationship with her for almost 3 years. It's mind-boggling how much stuff happens in a period of 10 years. I've written 44 books in the last 10 years. 44 books. Where will I be in another 10 years? Well, I guess that depends on what happens, who knows what'll happen? If I looked, ahead 10 years from 10 years ago, with all the stuff that's changed, would I, what would my reaction be? I think my mind would be blown. What? You've done all this, you've done all that, you've been through this, you've been here, you've lived through this, what? And I wonder how many other people sort of have that same experience. It's been a whirlwind. And wow, really thinking about that 10-year period, and going from 30 to 40, that's and then from 40 to 50, and 50 to 60, and God knows when I'm going to die, if I do. And I say that, with I say that because if I do, as a sort of, because I've done some research into longevity treatments and research and whatnot over the years, and I wouldn't be surprised if my generation, the sort of born in the 80s or born in the 90s, even kids born in the 90s, like my step brother and sister, will be one of the first generations to live forever. And I talked about the depopulation bomb last time, so, and that sort of thing. But massive gulfs of time ahead of me, and yet the idea of turning 30, of having lived for 30 years, really makes me think. I think about where am I going to be when I'm 40? What am I going to be doing? How am I going to feel? Am I going to look back and say, God, I wish I'd spent more time, with my wife by the sea, by the ocean? What am I going to look back and wish I had done? What am I going to look back and wish I had focused on? That's another reason why I grow fruit trees. It takes 10 years for a lemon tree to come up from a seed and start bearing fruit. 10 years. I have a baby lemon tree that I've raised from a seed out in my yard right now. And it's not going to be bearing, if it lives, it won't be bearing fruit until I am 40 years old. 40 years old. Now there's a thought. Wow. But at least I can say, hey, when I'm 40 and it bears fruit, I can say, hey, I started this 10 years ago, so at least I can enjoy it for the rest of my life now. And I kind of look at the writing that way too, I'm doing it, and maybe one day I'll look back and say, yeah, I did all that when I was younger. I got it out of the way. Now I can sit back and enjoy it. Maybe these podcasts will be the same way. That's another reason why I've kept doing these, is that I realize the importance of keeping a journal, in a sense. My father told me a couple of years ago, he said, well, this was more than a couple of years ago, it was probably about a decade ago. He said to me, son, keep a journal. Keep a journal so that when you're older, you can look back on your day, as it were, or your years from the past, the way your life was before, and it'll put your life in the future in perspective. And I thought, oh well, no, that's horse shit. That's just a waste of time. This is just an old man being nostalgic. But he really was right. I wrote down just a few journal entries, sort of to try it out, and then I got tired of it. I'm like, I've got better use for the 15 or 20 minutes I spend writing a journal entry every day. I'll find some better use for that time. So I stopped, and then went back and looked at it a couple of years later, and it did put things in perspective. And who knows where I'll be in another 10 or 20 or 30 years. Maybe I'll go back through these podcasts and say, wow, it's interesting. It really puts everything back into perspective. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But Thinking about mortality. I don't know. I think about mortality a lot. Those who know me, and well, all you gotta do is go to the front page of my main author blog. Those who know me and know my bio know that I'm a Freemason, and don't let that scare you, because there's not anything scary going on with Freemasonry. Trust me, as someone who's gone through it. And they say, well, you would just say that because you're not allowed to tell the truth about it. That's usually the line that I get from conspiracy theorists. And not all conspiracy theorists are bad. I think some conspiracies, there are a number of conspiracies have been proven true and over the years, and that's a whole other can of worms. Conspiracy theories, I find them to be absolutely fascinating. Some of them I kind of wish that they're true, because it'd be interesting, like Die Glock, the bell, that German, what is it, weird German experimental, thing from World War II that supposedly was able to open doorways to other dimensions and that kind of stuff. A lot of conspiracy theory stuff like that is fascinating to me. The idea of hollow moons and, artificially constructed planets and, NASA's, human presence on Mars that we don't know about and all this kind of stuff. Find it fascinating. Do I think it's actually going on? I don't know. Who knows? It's a great story either way. But, you run across a lot of stuff. Looking into conspiracy stuff and being a Freemason at the same time, you run into a lot of people who don't trust you no matter what you say. But if you really want to know what Freemasonry is, I'll tell you straight up right now. Freemasonry is a bunch of guys who usually are ex-military, usually blue-collar workers, good old boys. And when I say good old boys, I don't mean like some sort of, grand white old man network that's keeping the little guy down or whatever. I'm talking about good old boys, like in the classic sense, like, shop owners and iron workers and construction workers. They come together once a month in a lodge building to be spiritual without being religious, and that's really it. They come for brotherhood. They come to be friends and hang out. And there is a bit of ritual, as it were, to it, but the ritual is just, it's not anything devious. Heck, it's like hyper Christianity, which is a little strange. When I say hyper Christianity, I mean they've got the Bible right there the whole time. It's there. And they're not quoting anything that has to do with anything other than just God and humanity's relationship to God. I'm not being vague because I'm trying to hide anything. I'm being vague because I'm putting it out there, and I'm tired, and I'm trying to put it out there simply. But anyway, I spend time at the lodge, and I have good working rapport with some of the guys in the lodge. Here's another thing. If you think that Freemasons are behind some sort of global conspiracy, now Bilderberg, that is something different. You want to look up Bilderberg online, do that. That is some weird shit. Cremation of care, that is some weird shit. Freemasonry is neither of these things, has no relationship to it. If Freemasonry was the sort of the outpost that led to, or the organization that led to world domination, I don't think I would be a starving artist. That's sort of right there. If you need any proof at all, that could be the very simplest proof. That Freemasons have no plot to rule the world, only to make it a better place. And when I say that, I mean literally. I mean, Freemasonry here in America donates over $1 million a day to education, and that's just the Blue Lodges. We're trying to make the world a better place. A lot of lodges have programs that help benefit local school programs. Well, a friend of mine actually in the lodge had a program he did for a couple of years where there were these kids that were not doing too well in math here at the local high school, and their math teacher was really into doing bike rides on trails, and so they came up with this program where the kids could earn helmets and bikes by doing well on their math exams. And then so you take a class full of kids that are doing math, and say half of them are not doing well or are failing, and by bringing their grades up, they effectively earn a bicycle that they can go ride with the math teacher on these trails locally, and helmets too. And who pays for this? Well, the guy in the lodge, my friend in the lodge. He pays for this program. He pays for the bicycles. He pays for the program, or for the helmets. He pays for the transportation of these kids and the material to trails where they can go ride with the math teacher. And not only is it helping cultivate this mental intelligence, but it also cultivates a sort of healthy exercise, as well. And this guy does it entirely out of pocket for no reason other than just he wants to make a positive difference in the world. And this is what Freemasonry is about in my experience. But one of the things I've noticed about Freemasonry, and then going back to the topic of mortality, is that there's a couple things that really have made me think a lot about my own mortality in the last few months. And one of them is I've been working on my second degree, preparing to go into third degree. And in the second degree, there's a line that in the ritual that there's like I keep saying ritual, but it's more like a litany. There's a litany that you have to memorize, a monologue that you have to memorize for each degree. And for the second degree, there's a part in the monologue that you have to memorize, which is from Shakespeare. The quote is from Shakespeare, and it says something like keep in mind that you are always traveling upon the level of time to that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. And this is a Shakespearean quote, and it has to do with sort of keep in mind that you're constantly moving forward in time towards death, and this is something we all deal with. And for some people it's terrifying. I've been terrified by it before. Then I make peace with it. Then something happens and I get terrified by it again. I go back and forth on it with death. And in the last few months, it seems like most of the guys that are in the lodge are over the age of 60, and so a lot of them are either becoming infirm, or they have relatives and wives who are becoming infirm. It seemed like in the last few months, every guy that I knew that I was friends with there, his wife was in the hospital or laid up or passed away or got Alzheimer's so bad she had to be put in the hospital, in a home. And it really made me think, my wife and I are going to be there in just a handful of decades. Just a handful of decades. We could possibly be at that place where I'll be dealing with the very real threat of her mortality. And I love this woman. She's my best friend. The thought of living without her is incredibly painful. I don't know that I could face it, I'm sure I could, but it wouldn't be easy. And it's stressful to think about. And I think why... I guess I should be lucky. We don't have kids. We don't have any plans to have children. And so the time that we have together there's not really anything that gets in the way of that. We're dedicated to one another. We're dedicated to spending a lot of time together. We love spending time together, and we're very lucky that way. But I still think about that extra 9 hours every day. I still think, why is that 9 hours there? Why, if we lived on a farm and we were taking care of a farm, the only time I would spend away from her would be when I plowed the far end of the, South 40 or whatever, and then if I missed her, I could just run on back. Oh, I love you. But, you can't do that when one of you works at home and one of you works in an office. It doesn't work that way. And I know that there are many people who are way less fortunate than me. But I don't know. It just really makes you think. What am I doing with my life? What would I do different? What do I want from my life and from the future? I want that permanent vacation. And I know that's a lot to ask. And I don't feel like I, am entitled to it either. That doesn't stop me from wanting it. Just like it doesn't stop anyone else from wanting to win the lottery, Am I willing to work towards it? Yeah. The only way I know how, which is as a writer. I'll pay off my student loan first. But the idea of a permanent vacation, that sounds, if I could place an order with the universe, I want that. I want that. That sounds like that's the future I want. But, so anyway, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I've talked about sort of talking about mortality and corporate servitude, as it were, indentured servitude, neo-feudalism. How much I love my wife, which I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there absolutely sick of hearing about now. But mortality, something to contemplate, definitely. And I remember one of the things I was going to address. I knew there was one thing I forgot that I was going to address in regards to mortality and spirituality. Do I know what's going on out there beyond life? Do I know what the afterlife is like? No, I don't know absolutely for sure. I have some sneaking suspicions. I think we all have a piece of the puzzle, and I did some research and found out that I thought I was the first one to come up with the idea that we all have a piece of the puzzle, but then I read a Timothy Leary quote, and damn, he came up with it before me. But we all have a piece of the puzzle. I don't think anyone knows exactly what the afterlife is like, and that may piss off some of my listeners. But I've, as the son of a cultural anthropologist who comes, and coming from a family where there are 8 or 10 different religions that are devoutly worshipped by different members of my family, I've seen miracles. I've seen miracles happen in all faiths, in all kinds of faiths. I've seen miracles happen in Wicca. I've seen miracles happen in Christianity. I mean, my mother is Wiccan. I was raised in a Wiccan household on my mom's side of the family. And my father's side of the family is Foursquare. Foursquare Christian. Chapel in the Pines, Quakers, bakers, candlestick makers. Stand up in the middle of the aisle during the sermon and go, "Oh, Jesus, the Spirit is in me." And I had laying on of hands healing when I was a kid. I went through a period where I didn't believe any of it. I went through a period as an atheist. I went through a period as an agnostic. I've done a lot of research into spirituality, and I don't think anyone really knows what the hell is going on. And but I have some sneaking suspicions as to some of the things that might happen after life. And so my point with that was, they say, well, I can imagine people out there would say, well, there's no reason to be afraid or sort of be in pain, as it were, dread the idea of my wife's mortality, for example, or my father's mortality, or my mother's mortality, or the fact that my relatives are going to die, because you'll be with them again in heaven, or you'll be with them again in Summerland, or they're smiling down, or it's wonderful, and all this, I miss my wife when she's gone for 9 hours. If she was gone for 9 years, that sounds incredibly painful to me. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter. Yeah, it may be that when we're both dead, we'll meet on the other side as angels or whatever and have a wonderful time, for the rest of eternity, or whatever you believe. It could be just as likely that, she dies, she's gone. That's it. Personality obliteration. and that's hard to think about too. Or it could be that reincarnation happens, and she goes to the other side and then comes back as, I don't know, a cat or something. And then I come back as I don't know, a dog or a mouse or an eagle or a slug. You know what I mean? Suddenly there's no more love relationship there. I kind of like the idea of reincarnation. Hey, it's a cool idea. And I wouldn't mind being reincarnated as somebody who didn't have to go through a lot of battles next time around. So I've been through my fair share of battles. But someone who maybe like a trust fund kid who has a wonderfully fulfilling relationship with my wife, as it were, in her next incarnation, and we get together a lot earlier. My wife and I got together when I was 27, and it felt too late, in a sense. I'd like to have that extra, oh man, however many years. I'd like to have met her, in high school. Although we both had our learning experiences to go through, and she wouldn't be the woman she is today if we had met in high school. Just like I wouldn't be the man that I am today if we had met in high school either. I recognize that there's a lot of different lessons we had to learn and things we had to go through and life that we had to live before we ended up with each other. But that doesn't keep me from wishing that we had more time together, more time on this earth. And who knows, maybe 500 years from now, 500 or 1,000 years from now, when we're all immortal, when we're all, forever locked in not locked, but, forever youthful, as it were, healthy in the prime of life, I'll look back on this recording and say, oh, remember when mortality was a thing? Remember when we all thought we were going to die someday? Here's hoping. Here's hoping 500 years from now, my wife and I are still together. Happy. I wouldn't want to be with her if we were unhappy. But still happy, still together, still having a wonderful time. Young, permanent vacation. Looking back and going, wow, we sure had come a long way since those days. That would be cool. But I'm gonna wrap this up now. Now that I've done a little talking about mortality and love and things like that. And anyway, this was episode 4 of the podcast. And as I mentioned earlier, my name is E.S. Wynn. I'm the author of 40 books, or 44 books, and I'm done a lot in my life. Math tutor, English tutor, almost English professor. Spent some time doing Reiki practitioner stuff. Getting more into that again now. Guided meditations, taught classes. I've done editing. I've done voiceover work. Just always busy. Always busy. And I call this the Midnight Rider Podcast. And I'm not sure when I'm going to do another one. Probably this week. And so keep an eye out for it. And visit me online at www.eswin.com. That's win spelled with a Y. WYNN. And or thunderrune.com. That's my publishing company. www.thunderrune.com. That's all one word, with a R between thunder and rune shared between the two words. So I hope you have a wonderful night, and keep an eye out for my next podcast. All right. Thank you for listening.